And here we are once again on the Get Foxy show. Thank you all for joining us. Today we have Michele Standford. And Michele has a really interesting line of work. She is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. And Michele, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you're busy out there helping other folks, so taking the time out to chat with us is a real pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here, and I'm excited.
The reason I wanted to have you on the show is that one of your specialties is helping women balance their hormones. What does it look like when your hormones are out of balance?
Oh, wow. It can be anything from PMS, which is really not normal. People don't realize that because we've become so accustomed to it, but it's really not normal to have PMS. Fatigue, moodiness, breast tenderness. There's just the whole gamut of all of those emotions that we women go through that can be indicative of hormonal imbalances, especially as we age. And women in their 40s and up who are getting ready to go through that change, there's not a lot of resources out there for us. And it's not talked about, that change that we go through. And we rely on, as we're beginning to lose the estrogen, we have to rely on other, our adrenals and other things to get us through. And so we can tax them by being too stressed and our lifestyles and the food that we eat. And so it shows up in fatigue and unable to sleep and those kinds of things.
Yes, that's something I see fairly commonly in my own acupuncture practice. Women who come in, they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm constantly tired. I can't seem to get enough sleep. I'm starting to gain a little bit of weight, and I just don't have the sex drive that I once had, and I really would like to have that back." It just seems like it's chronic here in our Western culture.
It is. But there are things we can do about that.
And what do we do?
Well, that's multifaceted, and it depends. I use what's called the Dutch test. It stands for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. And it provides so much rich data. And it shows us how our hormones are interacting with one another and the metabolites that they produce. If we're producing too many metabolites of harmful estrogen, or progesterone is not right, if we're methylating correctly, which means are we detoxing it, because estrogen is a use it then lose it, and so you don't want to hang on to it. And so is our body detoxifying appropriately, which is also, it gives us kind of a peek into just our detoxification overall. And it gives us so much rich data, and then depending on where you are, we can, kind of set a path to kind of correct some of those imbalances and do things that, and cycling too is another thing that, we can work on trying to get our bodies back into that lunar cycle, the 4 phases. Even if you're not menstruating anymore, your body still is on a cycle. And so it's hard to say what do you do, because it really depends on where you are and what where your hormone levels are at.
You bet. This is definitely something you're speaking my language here as a Chinese medicine practitioner, because you treat what we see in the individual. There's not a one size fits all sort of answer. No. And yet at the same time, we have this kind of rampant problem of hormone imbalance, and there's all sorts of reasons why. I mean, we're overworked, we're overstressed, we don't take time to relax. Our typical American diet tends to be horrid.
Right.
And then we've got all these toxins in the environment now, and and then in our food sources, there's just lots and lots of different reasons why we can have these hormone imbalances.
But we can correct some of those with our food. We can, and changing that, we can change. We've got to work on our sleep and our circadian rhythm. I'm very unpopular for this belief, but I believe that daylight savings time is a menace to society. It truly is. And in the South, at 10 o'clock on June 21st, the longest day of the year, it's still light outside. That is not normal. Our body, the time change, the days get longer anyway, but there are things we can do though to work around that. But we have to be really diligent, because if we're on our computers late at night or we're on our phones, before we go to bed, then it shuts off that signaling to turn on the melatonin, and for our bodies to produce the melatonin. We need sunlight in the morning when we wake up to signal our bodies to, turn off the melatonin and begin, creating the serotonin. And those things, there are things like that we can do to help us get sleep and to help us do those other things. We need a nightly ritual, to help us sleep and relax, and just turning off all those electronics and like you said, relaxing, taking time to relax, and self-care is so important, especially as women. We think we have to be Wonder Woman, and all things to all people. And when we do that, we get run down, we get stressed out, and our hormones are exhausted in a lot of ways when you think about it. And I know I've been there. I've been the single mom with 2 boys, and it's hard, it's stressful. But I had to learn that, okay, this is my time. Put a sign on the door, do not disturb, and go take a long hot bath. You have to be diligent about creating a space for yourself, to relax, to read that book that you want to read, or go for that hike that you want to do, or whatever those things are that bring you joy, whatever that is. We have to make time to do those things. If we even have to write it on our calendar sometimes. So that's another important aspect of taking care of ourselves too.
Amen to that. That's also something I preach in my practice, where again, self-care is so important from a Chinese medicine perspective. It's all about balancing yin and yang.
Right.
And yin is that, relaxation, quiet, stillness. Yang is all about going and doing and moving and getting things accomplished. And so often women in our society are taught, okay, you've got to be doing, giving. But we're not taught to take the time to receive, to breathe, and to relax and just be still.
That's very hard for us. It is. And you have to learn to do that. It takes practice.
Yeah.
And it feels awful. You feel guilty because you're not doing other things. But you can't. It's part of loving yourself enough to take care of yourself.
Yeah. It's, in Chinese medicine, we consider the kidneys to be kind of like the batteries of the body. And when you're constantly going and engaging that kidney yang energy, eventually it starts to burn out.
Right.
Now, I think this relates to your work in regard to adrenal fatigue. I'm sure you see that a fair amount.
Okay. Well, let's talk about adrenal fatigue a little bit. And what you're talking about, the yin and the yang, it's really like the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system. The parasympathetic is when we're calm and we're relaxed. When we eat, we need to be in that parasympathetic state. But oftentimes we're not, because we're always on the go. We're always in a hurry. And so we're always in that sympathetic state. Well, what's going on in the sympathetic state is it's a heightened, it's when we're producing more cortisol, we're producing more adrenaline. And what's going on in the body during that time is that the digestion is shut down. The blood sugar is raised, our blood pressure is raised. And so you think of it as if you're trying to outrun a bear, okay, you want to be in that sympathetic state so that your blood pressure is up, your blood sugar is up, so you have the energy to outrun that bear. But we stay constantly in that sympathetic state. And when we do, there's going to come a time, what goes up must come down. And you're going to crash. But adrenal fatigue is really a misnomer. It's really not that the adrenals are fatigued. It's the communication between the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the adrenal glands. It's called the HPA axis, and it's more the signaling and the communication between the hypothalamus and the pituitary talking to the adrenals. It gets stuck in this negative feedback loop, and that just so it's not really, so adrenal fatigue is not really, it's not that your adrenals are fatigued, it's just that this system, this axis is stuck in the on position, and we have to work to get that and to turn off.
And how do you start to do that, Michele?
Well, it begins with some of the things that we've already talked about, because when you're in that heightened system, you're not sleeping, you're not getting enough sleep. And one of the biggest things you can do, one of the best things you can do for that system is to get adequate sleep and restorative sleep. But we're not doing that because we're on our computers late at night. We're running the kids here and there, and we're not taking the time to relax. We're not taking that time away. We're not, and we're just constantly on the go. And that's why it's so important to have that nightly ritual, to make sure you're getting sunlight in the morning when you wake up, to begin signaling those things. We have to get our circadian rhythm back into some kind of balance, which will then help the HPA axis begin to kind of calm down. Of course, there are also supplements and things that we can take to help, manage those things. And in our food too, when we're, I wrote the book on our food system and our food supply and what's wrong with it. But it's all of these things. It's not one thing, we have to address all of it. But our stress, we are just a highly, highly stressed society. And we've got to get away from that. We've got to not be okay with the cultural norms of and this is a real unpopular, again, I'm a little outspoken on certain things. Your child does not have to participate in every single activity that there is. Okay. Pick one sport and be really, really good at it. You don't need to do 5 sports. When I used to teach high school, and I taught a couple years, I taught drama, and I would have kids go, I can't come to drama practice because I have football practice. And after football practice, then I have cross country practice, and they're in chorus, and they're in, and I don't have time to do my homework. Well, we're teaching our kids this type of lifestyle, so it kind of starts with, we've got to recognize the importance of getting away from all of the hustle and bustle, all of the technology, all of the craziness that goes on around us, and being, like you said, just being still at times. Nature is a wonderful healer. Beauty is healing. Whatever you find beautiful, whether it's music, nature, but getting back out into nature, and getting back in touch with that is so important.
You mentioned the technology before bed and looking at a screen before bed. How is that negatively impacting a person? The
blue light from the screens, like I said earlier, it signals the body that it's not time. It's like sunlight. And our circadian rhythm, we have to have a certain amount of darkness. And so if we're on our screens late at night, then it's signaling to our body that it's not bedtime. And so it's we don't have enough melatonin to fall asleep that will help us sleep. And so there are things you can, if you have to be on your phone or you have to be on your computer late at night, they do make what they call blue blocker glasses that you can wear, that you can put on, that will block the blue rays coming from the technology, so that your body will begin to make the melatonin so that you can go to sleep. Because a lot of people rely on the melatonin supplement, but that's not a good thing, because melatonin is a hormone. And so if you continually are taking melatonin, one, you're going to become resistant to it, you're going to build up a tolerance to that supplement, and you're going to have to take more of it, or it's not going to be more effective. And it's signaling to your body that it doesn't need to produce it anymore. So you want to retrain your body, to begin producing that hormone rather than relying on supplements to help you sleep at night.
There you go, ladies. So prior to going to sleep, it sounds like we need to put down those screens or be wearing blue blocker glasses.
Yeah, let's see. I think I have a pair. I can show you. Mine are clip-on because I wear glasses, but they look like this. They're kind of orangey, yellowy color, and you just put them on, and it blocks the blue rays from the technology.
That's fantastic. That's not something I'm certainly aware of. So you've certainly just educated me.
Oh, awesome. Good deal. Yeah, it's very helpful if for some reason you have to be, on your computer or on your phone. But let's face it, do we really need to be on Facebook at 10 o'clock at night? Do we really need to be on our computers at 10 o'clock at night? That's when we need to be reading or just being with the people that we love, and just being present with them, or taking a nice long hot bath. That's what we need to be doing. We need to, I think there's some addictive things going on there with technology that are not good for many, many reasons. And health is just one of, physical health is just one of them. But we need to break away from so much technology for lots of reasons.
You bet. Michele, I'm going to switch gears a little bit
Okay.
and ask you, what does Foxy and being Foxy mean to you?
It means being true to me and who I am, and not being, I think when you hit 40, particularly, you get to the point that it doesn't matter what other people think of you, and you have become comfortable in your own skin, and you know who you are, you know what you like, you know what you don't like, and you're good with that. And it doesn't matter whether other people like it or agree with it or not. You've just kind of come, once you get to that age, you just kind of come into your own, and there is something beautiful about midlife. You just kind of blossom, and you can just be eccentric if you want to be eccentric, or, you're just who you are, and it doesn't matter what other people think. And you're just your authentic self.
And who embodies Foxy in your world right now?
Me.
Well, yeah. Oh, goodness. I think you're the first person who may have answered that question that way. That's fantastic.
Oh, how have other people answered that question? Did they give you a person?
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually it's a family member, or maybe a mentor, or every once in a while a celebrity of some type.
Yeah.
But, I am so impressed with you right now that you said, yes, that's me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is fantastic. Well, out of the many women that you've served, what are the most common questions that you get about your work?
Libido, fatigue, sleep. How do I change this? How do I get back to feeling better again? In midlife, we don't want to be 20 anymore. But we don't want to be 80 either, and it's possible, and we don't have to. But a lot of women are, when we get the libido's gone, the hot flashes have started, just the fatigue and the little bit of weight gain. A small amount of weight gain is normal and perfectly fine. It's when you get past those, 3, 4, 5 pounds, maybe when you start going beyond that, then that's when there's really some problems going on. But it's just, I want to be me. I don't feel like me anymore, and I want to feel like me again.
And how do you begin the process of reclaiming yourself?
I do the Dutch testing. That's we're not our test, but in order to, we have to get to the underlying root cause if we want to correct imbalances. And the only way to do that is to look at it. and to see what's going on, at the cellular level. And so I begin with that. And then we create, because it could be that they have, low cortisol, or they might have high cortisol. Their estrogen might be low, or their estrogen's too high, or the progesterone, or the ratio between them are out. And we don't know that without looking, because some of the symptoms are similar. There are some things that are particularly for low progesterone. There are some things but there's also a crossover of symptoms. You can have, the same symptoms for different levels of hormones. So it's really important to look at that. And then we just kind of chart a path, and a course based on, what our levels are, and what's going on in our life too. So like everybody's different, and there's no one size fits all. Even as a school teacher, I despised that, I forget what it's called now. It just flew out of my brain. But the one size fits all. And even walking into a store, and to buy a hat, looking at you with your hat. I love wearing hats, but I have a small head we they don't fit. They have this one size fits all hat. Well, I don't need a one size fits all hat. And it's the same thing with our health. We have to begin to really look at our lifestyle. What are we doing? What kind of work are we doing? What are our relationships like? Or is there stress and trauma there? And that's another area too. Was there any trauma in your past life? Not your past life, but as a child, or even as an adult, was there any kind of physical trauma, emotional trauma? Because our bodies hold on to that too. And I know that as an acupuncturist, we have to address those issues too. So sometimes if you've done everything else to get well and you're still having issues, then that's another area to look at and to examine. What are you still holding on to? And it doesn't have to be significant trauma. It could be childhood abuse, but it could just be, other things. And so just because you weren't abused as a child doesn't mean that you may not have suffered some type of trauma, or even as an adult. And so, like I said, there are just so many different things to look at when we're trying to fix ourselves.
You bet. The emotional side of that
Mm-hmm.
is big stuff, and that's one of the reasons why I really gravitated to acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, because that does help address that part. I mean, you're right. You don't necessarily have to experience massive trauma, child abuse, sexual abuse, those kinds of things. But I mean, even having been in a real bad bike accident or a small fender bender, you get some whiplash. These things can still trigger and hold. The body holds on to these things.
Mm-hmm. The body remembers
that you experience in just that small little fender bender, and it makes everything tighten up back here and in your neck and in your shoulders. And anytime you hear, screeching tires or a car horn or something, all of a sudden, bam, your body goes right back into that traumatic sense, and it lights things up. So being able to release those kinds of things out of the body can make a world of difference sometimes.
Huge difference. Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree there. How can people get a hold of you, Michele, if they want more information about the work that you do?
They can go to my website, MicheleStandford.com. That's Michele with one L. And that's probably the best way. Or they can just email me too, Michele@MicheleStandford.com, and just reach out. I love what I do. I haven't always done this. I've had other paths that I've gone down, but when my own health took a hit, I had to stop and figure out, and doctors weren't helping me. And I had to figure it out on my own. And so that's what I did. And so it's kind of led me to this path. And I absolutely love helping other women, particularly. I do work with some men, but I love helping women regain their youthfulness. I don't mean 20, but just to regain and not feel just like crap all the time, and to get back some of that vitality. It's possible, and it's possible to move into your 60s and 70s and still be, very vibrant and have a fulfilling, sex life with your partner. And it's possible. And I love giving women that, the chance to realize that possibility.
What would be your one piece of advice? If you could only give one piece of advice to the listeners today, what would it be to help them begin to start reclaiming their foxiness?
Nutrition. I think the number one thing we can do for ourselves is nutrition. It matters what we're eating. It matters that what we're eating is clean, that it's not covered in pesticides, that if you're eating meat, that it comes from healthy, happy animals. It's what fuels, our bodies. And nutrition is the number one thing you can do for your health, making sure you're getting really good nutrition.
Excellent. Michele, if you can believe it, we're
done
already.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I have enjoyed this.
You bet. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I certainly appreciate you and honor you for the work that you're doing, because you're out there transforming and changing lives for the better.
Yes.
So thank you for your work, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, and thank you for having me.